Now let's discuss a few more common HTML tags. One of them is input. This input tag is used to create input controls for accepting data from the user. So somewhere you might have seen input fields where you, let's say, enter your username or something like that. So that sort of input is created using this tag called input, and as you can see, this is a self-closed element, and there is an attribute of type is equal to text. In fact, even if you don't write type is equal to text, then also by default it is type text. So basically, let's try out this input element. So let's see, I have a input tag. So let's see, this thing is will be visible like this. Like, you can write anything, right? Any value you can put. Now let's remove this. We'll see that it still renders it, right? Which means that by default it is input type is text. Why this type is needed? Type is not needed in the sense that if you don't give it, then it is by default text. However, type is needed for other types of input data. So this is the most common one. Common one means that if this thing is, let's say, username, and obviously you're typing username, whatever you are typing, that is fine, but there are other types like type password. So now we will get into that things, that let's say password, and you have an input type which is not text but password, and then you can see that you have got two fields. This is username and this is password. As you can see that as expected, so all these are by default behavior of browsers, that if you are having password type, then it will not be visible. So they have the default support as expected. Now both are coming in one line. Why? Because apart from being self closed, input is also inline element. So if we want a break, then we can provide line breaks so that everything comes in separate lines. Okay, fair enough. Apart from that, why are we taking these values from the user? Some If we are taking let's say some username and password, then we have to submit it, then only it can go somewhere. So there is also an input type submit, where let's say this input type and the type is submit, then we can see that a button sort of thing comes where we can click, but you see that clicking here, nothing happens. Why? Because there is no way to know that when we are clicking this, then what should happen. This can be all these are independent, right? So how we know that when we submit, then what should be submitted? Okay, for solving that, what we do, that we use a form field. Okay, form field in the sense that there is a tag called form, and inside that we can keep all these. Then in that form, if input submit is there, then input submit knows that okay, whatever the input items are there in that form, that I have to submit. If there's only one thing, then that I have to submit. If there are multiple things, I have to submit those. Now where to submit, what is this form, how to create, we'll come back to it in a moment. For now, as I already mentioned, that if type is missing or invalid, it defaults to text, which means that, let's say, instead of password I could have mistyped it something else, then anything invalid which is not a valid type, then that defaults to text. You can see that this becomes text. So two things, if you don't provide, or let's say provide empty, then also it's text. If you provide invalid, then also it's text, which means that only valid values have to be provided for anything other than text. Okay, that is fair. Now we have one another thing called placeholder. So placeholder is something which in many websites you must have seen that here something is already written, like in username, your username here or something like that. So let's say you put a placeholder and you put username. Then what is going to happen is that this text username will be available in light grayish thing below this, which means that it will be there, but as soon as you start typing it will go away. It is just intent that what this field is all about, which means that every time what we had to do that, okay, if nothing is there then we have no idea that what this field is all about, so we have to type username in front or password in front. So that is one way. Another way is this. Now once you have this, then I don't think you need this, so you can remove this also if because it is not needed. Now it is clear that what this field is all about. And again, this thing is not only for input type text, you can in fact write the same thing, placeholder for other input types also. So you can see that this is username, this is password, and then you can submit. But still that question persists, that what to submit. One other important thing is that a caption can be provided for an input field using label element. So this is not a caption, this is like placeholder. Caption is something which we were talking about earlier, like this thing, username and password. Okay, so this caption, you see what happens that okay, so somebody clicks here, then only it becomes it becomes active. Shouldn't it be the case that this whole row is regarding username? So even if somebody has clicked here, then also it should be become highlighted. It might not feel like it is a big deal, but you understand that let's say a radio button is there or checkbox is there. Instead of this thing, a checkbox is there. Then let's say this much long name is there. Let's say my choice 1, my choice 2, and then checkboxes are there. We will come back to checkboxes. Checkboxes are also a type of input. In fact, we will come back and see that input type checkbox. If we write, then that thing will come soon. We'll see. But the point, you understand that in order to select checkbox, you have to go to that small checkbox and click that. Then only it will become checked. I don't want that. I want that whole line is like my choice 1 and then checkbox. Then even if I click on this, then that should be checked. So actually what happens that somehow you have to connect this thing and this thing. So this thing is obviously like normally text. So you can write it in a span. So you can normally write it in a span also. You simply write it, then also it will be visible. You can simply write it in a span also. But there is a proper tag for specifically this thing, and that thing is called label. So if you put inside label, then you can connect this and this, but still you see that we have not still it is not working like that, because we have not said that this username has to be connected with this. And that is where this syntax comes in, that you can use something like this, that let's say a input some element is there. Now you provide some ID for this, and in the label there is a particular attribute called for. Inside the for, whatever the identifier you give, if that identifier is some element's ID, then that label is counted as connected to that particular input. Okay, let's try that out. Which means that if we are using, let's say, this input, then let's write ID is equal to let's say user, and I here give for is equal to user. So a unique ID is given. So I am writing this like randomly. If in a proper web page, if you are using, then you have to ensure that all the IDs which you are giving anywhere, that should be unique. So if you have used it here, then don't use any other input element or any other element, in fact, with the same ID. But here, for simplicity, let's take a simple name user. Now that ID I have to write in for field, and then it becomes connected to this. And if you see that now, even if I click on this, that becomes active. And now since it is connected, so it does not matter where it is, right? I can keep it, let's say, here, right? This username is here, but if I click here, see, that thing becomes active. So it's just a way of intention of saying that how to express the connection between this label and this input. Okay, now the same thing we could do here also. So instead of writing password like this, we could have written a proper label, and for that this password will be given, but for that field, for attribute, we have to give some id. So let's say id is equal to let's say pwd, and that pwd is put in for. So again, the if you click on password, this becomes active. That is one of the syntaxes. The other syntax is, okay, why to separately write it for connecting? Why not write this input inside the label itself? And that should not be a problem, because input is a inline element. If for any inline element, and label is also inline, so we can put inline inside inline, right? In fact, let's try that out. So instead of doing this thing, let's remove the whole thing, and we create a separate label. Remove the for, it is not needed. I have something like this, and let's move this to here. So now we have seen that label, and whatever label we want, put it inside. No need of for, just inside that label we have input. Okay, so this also works. If you refresh, click on password, it gets active. So this is just one thing which I wanted to show. Anyways, if you are using placeholders, then like this needs not be done. But at other places like radio button checkboxes, it is handy at some places, right? Okay. Now this is what I was talking about. That how we know that how we know that which inputs are being submitted by the submit button. Okay. So. Earlier I was saying that, okay, something like this one input field here is there, and let's say some input field here is there, and let's add a placeholder here also. So let's say a placeholder password. So this username and password is there, that is fine. But if I submit, how do I know that what to submit? So for that, the syntax is that if we create a form element, and inside that for element, inside the body of that form element, if whatever inputs we keep, then if one of the inputs, so let's say, and so these are input elements, and this is like we are submitting. So let's take all of them, create a form element, inside that keep them. Now first thing is that what is this action? So you'll see that action is that at what endpoint we have to submit. This can be a full URL also. This can be, if you study from slash, then this is like on this website only, whatever your website, example.com or whatever is there, that website submit on that. What is the meaning of submit? Which means that send these data, these data, whatever your input fields are there, submit those, and submit those means give those details to this API endpoint. And since now we have not learned about how to build APIs and all that, I'll just show you using another way. But for example, right now, just simply, even if it will be 404 because it does not exist. This endpoint does not exist. But let's simply try that what happens. So on submit endpoint, I am trying to submit. So you can name this anything. Let's say submit page. I'm just for simplicity naming it submit. That's fine. So when you click on submit, then there are two values, right? Two values which are username and password. You have to submit those. Okay. So you see that, let's say admin, and just one second. Okay. So admin and let's say some password you put, right? If you click on submit, then you see obviously 404 has happened. But you see, how do we know that if any data is submitted or not? Actually, whatever data you are submitting to any endpoint, there is another thing called method of this form. Like by what method we are trying to give this. So by default, if you don't provide any method, that thing is basically called get, and there is another method called post. So I'll tell you the difference. By default, if nothing is there, which means see here we have not given anything, which means that method is by default get. Now this get method, or by default if I don't give that method is get, this means that you submit this in query string. So query string is something which is uh, in the URL. If you put a question mark, so if you see like any Google website or somewhere, then at some places, let's say you click here, then if you didn't pay notice, actually when I clicked here, if I copy this URL, let's say I copy this link and I show you here, then you see that there are many things here. So this services, and then you see question mark, and then you see there are many things, and if you enter, then it goes to somewhere, that is fine. But what happened actually, what happened is that those it is going to this endpoint, and it is giving these query strings, and using these query strings it is identifying where to go. So why that is used, that might be internal reasons. So they don't want you to directly go to that link, they want you to go to this link, so that they can track that from where you have come. So it will have those things, that some referral or something, that actually from where you are coming to this endpoint. So that might be helpful for them for analytics or something. But you understand the point. The point is that some endpoint will be there, and if you are using get method, then some key value pairs. So some key is equal to value. Okay, what is key value? Key value is, which means that there is some property named can be named anything, and there is some value of that property. And if multiple properties are there, then it will be separated by and. Okay, and let's say some other value, something like this. So many keys and its values will be separated by equal to, and a set of key value pairs will be separated by and. Okay, this is the first time I'm telling you this thing, that's why I'm going in that detail. But the point is that question mark, after that whatever is there, that can be query string. Okay, let's go back to our endpoint. Now we have understood something like this, but I told you something, key value will be there. What should be the key for this? We have not set any name for this. See, actually ID we have given, but ID is not the way how input fields work. ID can be used for like some other things, like uniquely target this element, get this element, or let's say we saw in label for it was used. But uh, in general, ID is not the name. In form context, the way it is done is that you give a name. You give a name to this. So let's say you give this a name of username, or simply let's say you give a name of simply user, and you give this a name of let's say simply pass. Okay, so the name of this input field is pass, and name of this input field is user. Now we have given the names using the name attribute. Now if we try to submit, then let's see what happens. So we write something and then submit. Now you see what happened. Yeah, 404 has happened, obviously, because this does not exist. But now you see that user is equal to whatever username we put, and pass is equal to whatever password we have put, right? Everything has been submitted to this endpoint using get, and that's why it is coming after question mark, all these data is coming. Fine. Okay, now there are much more details here. I'll come to it one by one. First, let's see one another thing. Input type submit. This we are right now submitting using that thing, input type submit, right? I will tell you that there is another easy way. You simply create a button and have any value. Let's say submit. That will also work. Okay, so let me show you. If I write anything, So that also works, which means that this thing is same. In fact, you should use button element only for more clarity. However, you can use input type is equal to submit also, but this is generally more preferred. However, let's say user, you can customize this text, right? Let's say you submit form. Now, instead of this thing, see, now it is submit form. But if you comment it, right, and go back to the earlier method of input input type submit, if type submit, okay, then what was happening is that we were seeing that this is small submit, right, all in small letters. But you see that here capital S submit something came, right? So basically it is like by default browsers have this by default text. In fact, you can change this using an attribute called value. So all the input elements will have this attribute, and here you can write whatever you write, that will come in this thing, right? So better to use the same word. So submit form, and we will see that this thing has come, right? So using this also we can do. However, we will remove that. I just showed you that how to add a custom text using input type submit, but we said that no, we will use simple button element. We'll go deep into button element after some time, but for now I just told you that simply having a button inside form, and you know, it is actually this button is inside this form, and you are clicking this. So by default the behavior is that any button which is inside a form, if you click that, by default that button is submitted, and that's why it is submitted, right? Okay, fair enough. Let's see one more thing. Before going to this thing, I would like to show you one another thing, that it is not always good, right? So let's say I wrote something like this and I submitted. Then you see that my password is visible here, right? In raw. In raw means that if let's say somehow I am trying to request something, then all these things will be going through my network requests, and let's say I bookmark it by mistake, or let's say it is going through the network, and some log mechanism is there where whatever the routes you are visiting, that is being printed. There are multiple scenarios in which having password directly in URLs is a bad idea, right? So if password or something, if something is like this, or you have some other mechanism because other reasons because of which you want to use get, that is fine. But I will tell you there is one another method which I was mentioning here, method post. So I can use here, instead of get, I can use the method post, and then I can submit the data. But let's see that. So let's say I remove the whole thing and I submit this using, now it is submitted using post, okay. But okay, now it is not there in the URL, that is fine. But then where it has gone, where it has gone? So in order to understand that, let's inspect it. We'll learn about developer tools in more detail later. Right now I just want to show you that in using these developer tools you can see these things, that where this data is going. So if I refresh and I type, let's say, admin and whatever my password, then you can press this button to clear everything. If you submit, then you will see that API hitting will be done. So if you click, then you see that yeah, it is saying that yeah, this thing is a 404 status. That is fine, obviously it is not existing. But when you click that, and that's why it is red, otherwise it will be like normal black color. But if you click that, you get more information. You see that you get a tab payload where you get the data, form data which you submitted. So it is not here, actually it is here, okay. User and pass, so these are corresponding to these two fields, user and pass. So corresponding to these two fields, they have created key and value corresponding. So whatever here it was there, same thing is coming here. That is fine. And then it is saying in headers part that yeah, this thing is not found, and then other details and headers are there. That is fine. But I just wanted to show you this thing. Okay, now let's try one more thing. Let's try the same thing with get, and let's see is there something coming here or not. So it is written form data and some content is there, right? Whatever key value pairs are there. Let's try it with get and see what is the difference. So get, and this time again let's say I'm hitting some username and password and I'm submitting. See, obviously it is here, that is fine, but it is here also, and here also it is there. Okay, so just in developer tools also you can see whether it is get method or post method, this will always work. Here you can always see the data, and you can see that here instead of form data or something, they are written query string parameters, because I told you that these things are called query string parameters. Okay, these are key value pairs of the query string parameters. Okay, so that is fine. Okay, now there is something called on submit in the form, and there is another attribute called on submit. Okay, let's see that. So why that is needed? That is needed because what if I don't want to directly post at this endpoint? See, firstly I want to do some logic or cleaning up of these data or some validation on these data, and then I want to hit some API. I don't want to directly hit it. Okay, that can be your requirement, right? Now in order to do that, what you can do is that you remove the whole thing. Okay, and you write on submit, and then I'll discuss this later, but there is something called functions in JavaScript which you can write. So let's create a function called handle submit. So what it does, and the syntax is something like this. So what it does is that when you submit, then it has no endpoint to submit. Actually what it does is that it will call this function handle submit. So obviously this function is right now not there, so there should be some problem. Let's see. So we'll again inspect and go to console. So console is where if any issues are there, here you can see clearly. Let's clear it up. Okay, now let's try that. So let's see something I'm trying to submit. Yeah, you saw that something for small amount of time, this something red came, and then again it went away. See I'm submitting, you will see that something red here will come and go away. So you see something came and gone. See actually what is happening, and at the same time you will see that the page has refreshed. See, the page has, if I submit, then you will see the page has refreshed. Okay, so basically that is happening, that yes, I was able to do something here, some error was there. Actually that error was that this function is not defined. That was the error. In fact there are ways to handle that. I will discuss that in detail, but you see there is option of preserve log. Okay, so if you don't preserve log, then what will happen? Whenever the page refreshes, your log also goes away. But there is a way to preserve log, which means that now if I have checked this box, then now whatever happens, whether my page refreshes, navigates here and there, whatever happens, this log will never be deleted. This will be just keep on adding. So now try that. So let's say I write, same thing will happen. It will again that red thing will come, and this will also refresh, but log will not delete it. So you see, this was the error, that handle submit is not defined. This is not a function, and this is obvious because we have not created any such function, right? So let's create that function. Again, don't get overwhelmed by this. This I have not discussed, but there is no way to see the values. See, obviously in developer tools we have seen, but every time we don't want to go there. So I just wanted to let you know that how to see directly in logs here, directly these values, so that every time we change something, submit, and we can directly easily see from here only. And again, anyways, this we will be doing later also, so it's just a sort of a warm intro to that. So and anyways, we are not going to discuss too much depth JavaScript. Just on the surface, I'll tell you that there is something called script tag. Inside that, I can write JavaScript. My JavaScript for this page, I can write it there. Again, like CSS, you can write CSS here also in style tags, or you can link to a separate file, style.css, right? Similarly, you can link to a separate JavaScript, or you can write a small, if it is small amount of some JavaScript is there, you can write here also. So I am going to get that way of writing JavaScript where I'm just directly writing here. Now here you can define something called function, which I will discuss later, but this is function name, and you put a keyword function, and then you put curly braces, and this syntax is for declaring a function. Now once you declare a function, now it is ready. When you click on when you submit, then this function is called, which means that this thing is called called means it will be invoked, and its whole body, whatever you have written in this thing, will be executed. Okay, so how to test that this thing is being called or not? So generally in most of programming language, you print something. The method of printing something in JavaScript is called console.log. So console.log, and whatever you write, let's say hello world, this thing will be printed. Now where it will be printed? So for our case, HTML files or something, you do anything that gets printed here. Let's test that out. So let's see. So I'm writing and I'm submitting. You see that okay, so you see the two things. One thing, that I'm sure that this thing is being called. Why? Because this hello world is printed. That is sure that it is printed. And just while I am at it, let me tell you other things. Console.log is the most common thing, but there are other ways of printing, like which is called console.warn. Let me write everything. So console.warn, console.warn, console.error, console.info. There are many things are there. So let me show you once more. So if I write something, submit, you see that console warn comes in some yellowish. This thing is error comes in this reddish thing, right? And this thing is info. So basically what are the differences between them and those things? This is like obvious, right? If you see that normal information, then if normal prints, then it is going in console log. Redundant, like things which are just for informative purposes, they go here. But if something is slightly critical, but it is not a breaking some deal breaking stuff, then you put it in warn, so that you can know at least, even if something has went wrong. And error is like absolutely something wrong has happened, so that's why it is red. It is just that just to give you more clarity while you are going through the logs. Or there are other ways of filtering the logs, that you can say that okay, I just want let's say errors, then others will not be visible. So in that case this thing is useful. Anyways, I was that place where I said that I am having simply log, and I submitted this. Okay, so anything, username and password I put, I submit this. So I was saying that this hello world is printed, so definitely this thing is executed. But what is the problem? You see that still it is submitting. You see question mark and this, it is submitting. First point, that it is submitting. Second point, that it is submitting where? It is not submitting at some submit endpoint or something, because anyways we have removed that action slash submit. We are not giving any path, but it is still submitting, and submitting at the same page. Means whatever is your current URL, it is submitting at the same page. maybe we don't want that. In fact, we are trying to do some validation logic or something. So maybe we don't want that. And first of all, why that is happening? That is happening because I mentioned you in the earlier part of this video that if you don't provide anything, then also there is a method, and that method is get, which means that by default using the get method it is still submitted. Somehow we have to avoid that. That is the first thing we have to do. Second thing we have to do is that, okay, we avoid that, and let's say this this thing will not be submitted. This thing will be still like at page this only. But if I have submitted, I have to get that data. And when I am submitting here, then all these data I have to process on these data. So that data has to go inside this. Somehow I have to be able to access that data from this function. How do I do that? Okay, so I'll just tell you that you can pass arguments to the function, and don't bother. So for you this thing is like a normal string. You just remember like that, like this is nothing, not some rocket science. It is just normal string. It is just highlighted in a beautiful way rather than like normal boring strings, because the VS Code or some any for that matter any text editor who is understanding the HTML syntax or something, they know that on submit is something where if you write something then it becomes it is a function thing. So they are just giving a color code. Otherwise it is normal string, simple, nothing else. Now this anything, now you can use this name event, and you can print that. So rather apart from printing hello world, let's print this value also. Let's see that what this value is. Okay, so let's submit this, and we will see that okay, hello world is printed. After that there is something, you see that something like this has been printed. So this is like some event, submit event it is saying. Okay, so okay, I'm not interested in that, but I'll tell you a couple of things here which might be important. So first thing is that there is something called event.target. Okay, so if I do event.target, then I will get something else. You see I get the form. Okay, I get the form. So what is happening is that whatever form, this whole form is the target. So this says that this event is arising, but from where it is arising, that is put in the target. That is the first thing. Okay, and I'll tell you that you can have dot elements, and then that thing will be available. So don't worry about the syntax and all, what is this dot and why it's just simply see that when we call this function, then when we submit, then this function will be called with this argument. Argument is special values which are being passed to a particular function, and then this event has some attribute of target, and this target is again having some attribute of element, something like this. That is not the main thing. Main thing, first thing I want to highlight is that how every time we are trying to do submit and it is submitting, I want to stop that. How to do that? For that there is something called event dot, and then I can do prevent default default function. Okay, so what happens that this prevent default function says that whatever is the default behavior, of this submitting thing is there. The default behavior is that it will properly go ahead and submit. It will not do that, and now it has prevented that behavior, and now whatever you want to do you can do here. Let's try that. So now if I click, then you see that the submission has not happened, and more importantly you see that something like this form collections or something has come, and if you expand that you see that you see that it is saying that yeah, okay, so this thing is first input, this if you take this thing is second input, this thing is third input, right? Apart from that, whatever the inputs you have given proper names. So for example, user, pass. Okay, so this is something called array. Array is a list of values. So at the first value, means three input elements are there. Then when we are asking these elements, then basically they are saying that okay, these are the elements which you have passed. So first element, second element, and third element, and all these elements they have passed as an array, right? However, apart from that, they also support these keys whose values are the that element itself, which means that if I want to access this, right, then I can access that using array index also, which is like there is a syntax which is called some arrays there. Then I go to the location means that array means that collection of things. So let's say 1 2 3 something is there, right? Then if then the indexing starts from 0. So let's say I want to access this first item, then I will say 0. I want to access this second item, then I'll say 1. I want to access third item, then I will say 2. So basically this indexing starts from 0 rather than 1, and from counting from 0, whatever the thing, so let's say I wrote 0, then counting from 0 the first item itself, which means that it will give 1. If this thing was run on this array, but this is not the array on which it is running. This thing is running on this elements array, and elements array is what? Elements array is this thing. Now its first item is this, you see, the username field. Its second item is this. Okay, so if I write 0, then it will give me that first element. Why I need that first element, I will let you know, but you understand that this input element will be available here. But this let's say you change the order, you move it from here to here, then now it is no more 0, you have to use 1. So in order to avoid that problem, what JavaScript does is that apart from giving you these numbering ordered indices and its values, which is like it is the array, so it should have, actually to be present, it is okay, I'll not go into that. It is not a array, it is sort of a collection. But what is the difference, that we don't need to bother about right now, but it is sort of array, you can understand. Apart from that, it can also have key value pairs, which means that rather than using simply 0 1 2, I can use whatever the name I have given. So the name I have given user, right? And you can see that user and pass, these things are available here. And if you highlight, you see that okay, pass is password 1, user is username 1. Okay, so we can use, rather than this syntax, we can use here a string and pass the name which we provided here. So here we provided name user, you put it here. And if you now print, let's say if you now try to submit, and you see that we have got the user element. You have got the user element, you see, user element we have got. But internally, yeah, whatever element it got and it just printed, it prints means it is just a string representation of that thing. Internally it has a lot of other things also, which everything cannot be printed here, right? What it has internally, its value is admin, and I want to extract that value, right? I'm not interested in exactly seeing this element. I'm interested in the value admin, because that is the whole purpose. That is what we are trying to do. We are trying to get the value, because now I am not even submitting. I have to do everything manually right now here. And why I am doing that, bothering to do that, because I want to do my custom validation, custom some sort of transformation or anything. Means I want to take care of all these values which user has submitted, and then I will hit some API from here, and I will send that to server. That is fine, but I want to do that. I will do that later, and we'll see that in JavaScript. But right now my whole target is somehow to get that. Whatever I'm putting it here, somehow I have to get it here. That is the only thing which we are trying to do right now. So here you can do dot value. So in dot, so you understand that if I provide so it has a value attribute also. In fact, I will show you. If you by default put some value is equal to, let's say some let's say AB Raj, right? Then you will see that that value is pre-filled, means whatever value attribute is there, that is actually the data in this. So pre-filled means it is already there, but right now if I change, then that value is changed, which means basically the data of whatever the user is trying to input is coming in one attribute, and that attribute I can extract here, its value I can extract here. Okay, that's fine. Now let's see if this thing works, what we are trying to do. So admin and whatever password submitted, and let's try to submit. Okay, now we can see that I have got this admin, whatever data user submitted, I got it, right? This is the purpose, of this entire thing, that now I don't need hello world, this prevent default is definitely needed, and whatever other value, so other value was pass, right? That pass will be also printed here. So username and password both will be printed when I submit. Okay, so you see that if I submit, then I get these values, right? And now I'm getting these values, so I will remove this preserve log because it unnecessarily keeps the log active. Okay, so now I'm getting the username and password whatever I'm submitting here. That is fine, right? That is perfectly fine, and I just showed you how to see that in the JavaScript function which we are trying to handle. Now I will not go anywhere further after that, because now what to do with these values and how to process these, that is the whole thing which what is the JavaScript programming way, how to program in JavaScript, that we have not learned right now. So we will not do anything. I just wanted to show you that how to get these values there. Now JavaScript part no more we will discuss here. Now let's discuss this, that yeah, we have got it, but these are the like two of the common input types. There are many other input types also which we'll discuss, but I told you that I don't want to submit directly. I handled a function in that I got the values, and then I have got already the values, and I will process those values, and I will do whatever with those, right? But that is the way of handling a form. In fact, this is a better way. This is a better way, and in any React applications which we will use further, this is the way which we are going to operate. But in normal static pages, where like there is no that much support, and we don't want to, or let's say we cannot do that because of a number of reasons, and then in pure HTML, these things are mostly handled on the server, because JavaScript and other there's something called single page applications, or purely JavaScript applications. Those have like a pretty sophisticated front end, where most of the things can be done on front end also, like sanitization, data validation, all those things. So means everything can be done in pure HTML JavaScript also. It's just that is easier to do in React and something, right? And that's why in earlier times, let's say your backend is in PHP or something, so you just submit everything to PHP, that's some server, and then that will take care of everything. The amount of code on front end used to be very minimal. That is not the case these days. These days, like front end has a lot of JavaScript already written. Okay, so we let's continue with the input fields. We already discussed a few. Now we will go slightly in detail in each of them, and also discuss a few more of the. So these things we have discussed, right? After that we'll see more, but let's discuss a few more things which are left in these input types also. See, text is there. There is something called min length and max length. Okay, which means that if I am, so let's say if I am putting here min length is equal to, let's say 5, and let's say max length is equal to let's say 10. If I do something like this, then what is going to happen, that you cannot have a, so let's say A, S, D, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. See, after once it is 10 characters, it is not going forward. So 10 characters are done. After that, whatever you write, you cannot write anything. So it is saying that maximum length can be 10. But what about minimum length. You see that I can write 3 length also. What is the problem, right? The problem is that this is fine right now, you can write it, but when you will submit, then it will throw error. Throw error in the sense that this is a browser default behavior. Browser can understand these things, right? Browser is obviously parsing these things. Browser is seeing that you have written min length 5 and then you are submitting. Browser understands what is the meaning of submitting. This browser also understands that this form is going to submit this form, and this input is written inside this form, so I have to validate that beforehand. All these things browser will take care of for you. The point is that it will show that, yeah, this text to lengthen this text to 5 or more. For less than 5 it will not work, it is suggesting you, that is fine, which means that you have to properly use at least 5 characters and then you submit, then it will work. Okay, username and password is printed. Okay, that is one thing. Apart from that, I told you this thing that if you want to change the whatever is visible in this button, then you can change this. Let's say I told submit form, then you simply write here value is equal to submit form, that will work. This we already discussed. Let's come to other types of input. One type of input is called number. So if I have so let's take a simple thing. Okay, and let's have a generic name, because I will be using this same element for a lot of types. Let's have a generic name, like some inpt whatever, or in inp. Let's say inp is just enter here or whatever. In fact, placeholder is not needed, we will not bother the just so we can simply write it here that some test field which we are trying to test for that particular type. Okay, but let's say inp is the name, and inp name I am trying to, so you understand, like each and every time the type is changing, so I don't want to change this name every time. So this normal so right now we can see that, okay, yeah, this works fine. Whatever I write here, I submit, I get that value, right? But this is what, this is type text. I was telling that time that there is something called type number, right? If I do this and refresh, then you see what will happen. Here you cannot have string. If you refresh, then you can only have number here. You see, you can write any number, it is fine. And you can see that here up arrow and down arrow is there. So if you click on this, it will be increasing, and if you click on this, it will be kept on decreasing. That is the first feature. Second feature is that you type A, B, C, D, anything, it will not be, only numbers if you type, then it will be written. Anything alphabet or something you write, or a special character, it will not be. See, E is written. Why E is written? Because E is a special type of number. Like this means that 312 into 10 raised to the power 2. You understand? Exponential E exponent. So just E is the only exception. Apart from that, like normal numbers can only be there. If A, B, C, D, only something X, Y, Z is something you write, it will not be visible. That is the first thing. Second thing is that apart from doing up arrow and down arrow, you can use your keyboard up arrow and down arrow. That will also work. See, I'm pressing up arrow, it is increasing. I'm pressing down arrow, it is decreasing. So this is like a normal thing. More importantly, if let's say there is nothing written, you will simply go here and start up arrow, then see 1, 2, it is starting. So up and down both happens. This is the number value. This is the number type, input type. Another is called file. So if I have file input, then you see what happens. You see that it gives you an option to choose file. Okay, so you can see that I can choose a file, and I can click on that, and you can see that this thing is selected. Now if I submit the form, what is this fake path, and how this thing works, how to process this and submit this to the server, that is like altogether different things we will discuss later. But for now, you simply think that like numbers you can send, similarly files also you can send. Files is like a whole file. How you send full files, that we'll see later in JavaScript and all. Right now you can understand that it gives you that feature in many files you see, right? So you can select a file, and then you can have that. That is the thing. Okay. I just wanted to show you the different types of the input. There is something called email. Okay, so if I type email, then you see that, okay, it looks like normal text only. So what is the difference? See, the difference is that when you submit, then it says that please include an @ in the email. So it's just like additional validation is there. A proper email, if you're writing, in fact, it is not validating the whole proper email. So for example, even if you're not having, it should have a proper .com or .in something, right? If even if you're writing something like this, then also it is, it says it does not, it just does a very basic validation that if it does not have @ or some invalid characters which should not be there in email, those things it will check. Other than that, it's fine. So anything is fine. Okay, so these, whatever value you are submitting, that email can be printed here. Type email is done. Type search. Okay, type search is, you see that it is also looking like input, but when you start typing, you see one cross appears, and when you click on it, everything disappears. So this is like a search behavior in many websites, on in your mobile phones also. Like you say that when you're typing something like, so which means that, yeah, I wrote something and I entered and this thing is done. Now I want to delete this whole thing. Now why I want to put a backspace so many times? I simply click that this work is done. So that is just a feature in search, type search. Okay, now there is something called type date. This can be definitely useful, that if type date is there, then I can see that, yeah, see, now the date selector has come, which means that I can select date and then I can submit, and then that whatever the date is there, that is submitted. Yeah, okay, that is fine. There is something called date time local, which gives you not only date, but it gives uh, date time local, your local machines with time zone date time. So if I refresh, then you can see that you can select date as well as time, and you submit, then that thing will be printed. What we have more? We have color. Okay, which means that it has a, HTML has a proper color picker. Okay, so we can pick a proper color. You see, by default is black is there, but as we can see, we can select any color, right? In fact, we can change these. Okay, so let's try that color. So you can say, you can select any color. Let's try this color, 25500, which we know that it is complete red. You have selected that color. Now let's try to submit this. See, if we submit, then by default, what is submitted? The hex code value of red color is submitted. Okay, that is fine. There is something called range, type range. So range is, so type range is something like this. It will be sort of a slider. Okay, sort of a slider. Okay, and if let's say I'm here and I submit, then you see 79. I'm somewhere around 80, and that's why this thing is printed. That is fine. What is the default value? If I submit, then default value is 50, which suggests that this is going from 0 to 100. Okay, speaking of that, there is a value called min and max, and let's say by default whatever 0 or 100 it is setting, but you can set your own values, which means that I can have min is equal to, let's say, 100, max is equal to 500, something like that, which means that the range, minimum range and maximum range is changing. Let's try that. So min is equal to, let's say, 100, and max is equal to, let's have 300. Okay, and let's see anywhere here, submit, 239. See, 100 to 300, whatever slider came, that is 239. Okay, if we refresh, default it is in middle, I submit 200, because 100 is one side, 200 is in middle, 300 is right? That's why 200 came. That is fine. But what if we don't want this sort of control that anything can be selected? What if I say that, okay, only 5 values can be there, 1 to 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it can be, or let's say only 5 values can be there, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. You understand? So I can configure that. So let's say 10 is the minimum value, 50 is the maximum value, that is fine. But only with this, it is going from 10 to 50. Understand? The default value in middle value is 30, but I don't want that, right? I don't want that. What I want is that there should be a step size, that after 10 only 20 can come, after 20 only 30 can come. So if I give a step size of, let's say, 10, then what will happen? Let's firstly give a step size of 5 to see better. See, if I do one notch below, it is 25. If I do one notch above, then it is 35. You see, it is increasing in 5 steps. It cannot go, its accuracy cannot be less than 5, right? And let's change that 5 to 10. Now we have got what we wanted. After 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Only we wanted these 5 points, right? So what will happen? This is 10, this is 20, this is 30, this is 40, this is 50. See, it cannot go in between. It can only go to these discrete values. It cannot have the continuous values, right? Okay. This should be fine. Now let's see one important thing, which is radio. Okay. So let's remove all this. This is not needed. The type is, now I am saying radio, which means that this thing will be a radio button type, right? But you understand, this just puts the radio. Obviously I have to give some description. So let's say I give the description, let's say option 1, and it's better to, like, convention to put it after this. That's why I'm putting after this. That's fine. So option 1, okay, I can repeat this: option 1, option 2, option 3, something like this. Let's say okay, I put option 2 and option 3. Okay, that is fine. Now you see, what is the default behavior of radio button? That if 3 choices are there, I should be able to choose one of them. But you see, if I select the second one and the first one, then the behavior I want is happening. And why that is happening? Because the name is same. Understand? If I would have not had this name at all, let's say like this, then you see that, okay, multiple can be selected. This is wrong, right? Only one should be selected. Why? Because it has no way of knowing that this are grouped. So grouping, what you do is that, so let's have something like this, option 4 also. Let's have option 4 also. Okay, now what you do is that whatever name, whatever inputs you want to group together in radio, you give them the same name. So if you give, let's say, all these, or let's say only 2, you give the same name. Let's say name is equal to option of OPT1, right? And you give like option of, let's say, name is equal to OPT2. Okay, so what is happening is that now this is not third and fourth option. It is like a second questionnaire altogether, and it is a separate thing. You understand? So it is something like this, that you can choose one of them, and it is completely independent of this. You can also choose one of them. Understand? Now this is a separate set of multiple choice. This is a separate multiple choice. So in this way you can do. However, if I create the whole thing a same name, let's say I put 1 1 all 1, then all the 4 options are part of the same question, sort of, right? And that's why only one of them can be selected. Got it? Okay. Now why I am putting name this, like I know that in that my handle function it is inp, so let's have that only. Okay, the name is that. What should be the value? What should be the value when I submit? Let's see that. So let's say I choose option 1 and I submit. So it is saying on. It is not showing some option 1 or something, right? Why is that? See the syntax. Name I have given, right? But I have to provide a value for each of them. Value for each of them. Why? Because how I know this is simply a text, right? How this JavaScript will know that how this value is not automatically going to that, right? Yeah, you can extract the its inner HTML something called value, but the better way is simply that whatever value you want, you write it down. That what is its value. So I will write it down that the value is this for, and this will be same for all the options, but this will be different. So obviously this name is same, but value will be different for all of them, right? So let's say this is called option 1, this is called option 2, this is called option 3, and this is called option 4. Okay, which means that now we should know when I submit 2, when I submit, then I see option 2. When I select option 4 and submit, then it is option 4. So this is the way in which you can identify that what option is being chosen from that set of radio inputs. Another thing is that checked. So what if I say that, yeah, these 4 options are there, but by default option 1 should be checked, or by default option 2 should be checked. By default, you understand? By default, nothing is checked right now. But what if I want that option 1 should be checked? So for that, you can okay, so just one correction. I mentioned earlier that if you submit, then you could parse the input and get this option. You cannot get that option. Why? Because this option 1 or option 2 is completely outside the element. Input element is a self-closed element. It has no body, which means that this option 1 is not a body of input. It is a completely separate thing altogether. The element starts and finishes here only. So when you submit, then there is no way. The only way and the correct way and the only way is to provide a value. Okay, so that time I think I misunderstood something and said something wrong. Okay, so this is fine. I was saying about that I have to check, provide check. So checked, if I write checked, then what happens? You see by default option 1 is selected. If I put checked in option 2, then you see by default option 2 is selected. So this is the meaning of checked. Now what if I put let's say checked here also and checked here also? This is not expected, right? In radio, in the same group, only one can be checked. But what if I have multiple checked? You see it is taking the second one. What if I have in the fourth also? See, it takes the fourth one. So basically whatever is the last one, that it is taking. Okay, so we should have only one of them. Okay, now there's something called checkbox, which I was saying earlier. And whether it is checkbox or radio, in both cases, now you see the problem. What is happening is that, yeah, this option 2 is selected. I want to select option 3. If I select on option 3, see, nothing is happening. You see, nothing is happening. I have to go here and this is a small dot I have to click, and then only it will be. Oh, like, you understand, like in many websites, simply, and if in some websites it is not happening, then they have not done proper designing of the website. If you simply click here, the options should be selected, right? But in our case, I have to go here and select that. That should not happen, right? Let's fix that. In order to fix that, what did we say? We have to use ID and use label, right? That is one way. And other way was what? Other way was that let's put the whole thing. Let's put the whole thing in a label, right? So if I have a label, and I don't need for because I'm not using ID way, I'm using just internal tag way, right? Now you see that for option 1 I have performed this. So for option 1, if I click here only, then you see this thing is selected. And again, like you have to do on all the 4 radio buttons, then it will work for all of them. But I just wanted to show you that that is fine. We were trying to see what is checkbox. Okay, let's remove the checked for now. Yeah. So type checkbox. So the first thing we have to do is that it should not be type radio, it should be type checkbox. The second thing is that okay, here the name will not be same. There is no need of any grouping of checkboxes. Why? Because okay, checkboxes can be selected multiple. So if 1, 2, 3, 4 all are there, then all can be separately chosen. What is the problem, right? Whatever is chosen, you in fact 1 and 3, somebody chose 1 and 3, then you have to separately know that 1 is checked and 3, there is nothing called grouping here, right? Because only one out of those is not selected, it can be multiple. So definitely name will be different, and name will be different, then again this is become invalid. Now there is no input with field inp, np 1 2 3 4 is there. So let's make it inp1 for now, and dot value. Okay, let's see that. So now you see it has become checked. So let's say I check this and I check this and I submit. If I submit, then I only get option 1. Why? Because I am not printing everything, right? I'm not printing everything. I have to print all the values, right? 2, 3, 4. Okay. And let's select 1 and 3 and submit. Okay. So yeah, so I am using incorrect value. So see what is happening. The what is happening is that I am saying that value dot value, right? This thing actually you have to remember. This is a common mistake, that for checkbox you don't have to use dot value. You have to use dot checked. Why is that? Why is that? Because you see that in other cases value is the value, so there is no confusion. In case of radio, all the values are there, but I know that the names, all the names are also same, which means that only one of those values will be the final value of that group, and that's why there also the value works. Here the problem is that the problem is that you have to give separate names also, and then it is not like input text that you are, whatever you are writing, that is becoming the value. In fact, you are giving value yourself, right? Now if that is the case, then value is already fixed. Then what are you selecting, what are you not selecting, that is checked, that is checked using this dot checked. So this checked is like, okay, nothing was initially checked, this I have selected and this I have selected, so what are the things I have checked, and if you submit that, then you get the value true false, which means that the option 1 and 3 are selected and these are not selected. True means selected, false means not selected. Fair enough. And when I refresh, everything goes away, and that I told that I can use something like checked, right? So if I use checked, then you see that that thing is already selected by default. You can also obviously uncheck it, that is fine, but by default the behavior will be that it will be checked. And again, you can use it at multiple places, but unlike radio, here both will be appearing. Why? Because yeah, this is checkbox, this is not radio, multiple is fine. So if multiple you use checked, multiple will be selected. Okay, fine. So this should be there. There are a lot of other types. I cannot go to all of them, but most of the things I have covered. Most of the things I have covered, which are like commonly used. Okay, so don't bother. And you can go to documentation in case you need, right? Now I discussed in passing what is a button, but let me go to that once more. So let's see. Let's have a normal text, right? And let's have this inp, and everything is not needed, simple inp is there, and I just need value. Okay, and this is not needed, and this is also not needed. Okay, so I see that if I type something and submit, that value is coming. But I was trying to show you that this button, how it is working. See, first thing you have to understand is that like input has types, button also has types, right? And if you don't provide anything in input, the default is it is a text input. If you don't provide anything in input, the default is text type of input. Button is other way around. Button has also types, but if you don't provide anything, then by default the type is submit. You see there are many options, not that many options like input, but button has a few options. This submit, which means that this is exactly same as above. Either you write like this or you write like this, both are exactly same. The default is type submit. When you do that and you write anything and submit, you see that exactly same behavior is happening, right? This is the default. Let's see the other options. So that's what I was showing here, that one type is there, but the type value here I have written button, right? So let's change it here. Let's change this to button. Okay, when I do that, then you see when I submit, nothing is happening. Right? Why nothing is happening? Because the behavior is now not submitting. The behavior is, it is a button which will not do anything other than handle the click. What is the click handling? The click handling is given by a attribute called onClick, and you have to give a JavaScript function. So let me show you that here you have to write onClick. And anyways, you understand, I'm not submitting form, so I can write it anywhere I like. Understand? The point is that if whether it is inside form or outside form, if it is type button, then it is button. It has nothing to do with submission. It has to be button. It has to simply execute this whatever function you are passing. So what am I passing? I am passing, let's say handle click. Let's say this is a function name, right? Now with this function name I can create a new function, right? I can create a new function, and just to prove the point that this is being called, let's say handle click dot dot, I'm printing this thing. When should I click? And now it is not submitting form. Anyways, just let it be the name of the button. You can change the name of the button, anything. But when you submit this form, then you see that this thing will be called. You see, when I submit this form, you see handle click is called, right? So actually this thing is not doing anything. This is just calling that function, nothing else. Okay. This should be fine. Type button, and this should be enough for now. When you simply need to handle JavaScript functions, you need to trigger some functions, just use type button. Inside form, just use type submit, or if you don't use anything, by default it is type submit. It is fine, right? We already said button can be used to submit forms. So inside form, if you write type submit, it is a submit button. Even if you don't write, then as I mentioned, it is submit by default. So like this is also fine. Okay. One more important thing is that button can submit a form even from outside the form. Okay, this is interesting. So earlier I was saying that, you know what, if I have a button which is here, right, then obviously it can submit. There's no doubt about it, right? It can submit. But I am saying that, and how it is able to submit, because this is a separate form. I can have n number of forms, right? I can have n number of forms, and whatever form is that button in, it will submit that form. So you understand, right? So in that sense, you understand that, let's say I write here ASDF, and here I write, let's say QUERTY, whatever. If I submit this, then ASDF is submitted. If I submit this, then QWERTY is submitted. You understand? So both are separate, nothing to do with each other. But what if I say that, okay, I take this button out and put it somewhere? Can this trigger this? Actually, how it will know? Let's say I removed this also. Then this button will submit which form? How do I know? In fact, even if one form is there, then also how it will know that I have to submit this form? You understand? Even if the type is submit, I don't by default the type is submit. I don't know now where to submit. So for that there is a particular syntax. Actually, this can be done. This can be submitted from outside, but right now it will not do. See, right now, even if you click, it will not submit because it has no idea that what to submit. The syntax is something like this. Simple. In the form, have a ID and pass the same ID with the form attribute in the button. That will work. So here you should have a ID. Let's say ID is equal to, again keep that unique in the page. For now, let's say my form 1 is there, and then you pass here an attribute called form and pass that value. Whatever ID value is there, pass that. Now it knows that, yeah, I have to submit a form. See, and by default, if the type is button, then nothing will make sense, right? Because whatever you write, I don't care, it is type button. So again, either it should be type submit or not at all, nothing is there, then also it is type submit, right? If I do that, then you can see that it is submitting. And it is submitting why? Because of this syntax, that I have matched this form attribute value with the ID value of that form. Okay, this should be enough. So now, all the mostly common used tags are done. Let's finally give you one small thing called HTML doctype. So I showed you, like, at many times, let's say I created some new HTML page, and I showed you that when I create HTML pages, then there is something like this doctype HTML. What is this? In fact, our HTML should also have it, and you can see that this in HTML validator it was saying that doctype missing. So if you add this line, then that validation, that error will also go away. So you should always, every HTML file should always have this thing at the top. If you don't have, that is also fine. But why this is there? If it is there, then it can better make sense that whatever the features you are using, let's say some tag you are using, let's say section tag you are using, right? But this is available in only HTML5. How browser will know? Let's say some 5-year-old browser you have installed, 10-year-old browser you have installed. How it will know that what is this section? Or even if it is a newer browsers are intelligent enough to decipher that okay, you are using, then I will accordingly see. Unless you have specifically said that I am not using HTML5 in doctype. Which why you will do that? You will use latest versions, right? But the simple thing is that this doctype tells the browser, you are telling the browser that for parsing this HTML document, please use HTML5. Now, why HTML? How it knows? No, I am not writing HTML5 somewhere. Actually, it is the new syntax in HTML4 or something. The doctype was something different. So before HTML, the version was HTML 4.1. So let's see HTML 4.1 doctype. Then you will see, is there somewhere? Okay. So yeah, you can see that this complicated sort of thing was there. You don't need to understand any of these. I'm just showing you for the sake of it that for HTML4, you can see for HTML4 some complicated like this doctype is there, right? So don't think that why it will know HTML5, because in latest versions, if you simply write HTML, it means HTML5. So that's why it works, right? The point is that doctype is an information that you give to the browser that what HTML version to use for parsing your HTML document, as simple as that. The doctype declaration says must be at the top of the document. As I mentioned, you should not put it at the bottom. In fact, even you should not have even space or something. You can have a space after that, that is fine. But the first character, starting from first character, that should be this if you are using doctype. Otherwise, some browsers will face some issue. Okay. It should be at the top of the HTML document, and for HTML5 we use this doc type, like simple doc type HTML, right? And again, we know that this is case insensitive, and that's why whether you use this or you use this, everything is fine and it will work fine. So that should be it for most of the HTML basic tags. We'll come back to some HTML things after some time. Obviously, HTML things, and CSS things, somewhat advanced things will come after peeling some layers. But for now, it should be okay. See you in the next video.